1 year ago, I started training for my very first and longest trail run ever. And I want to share with you some of the insights that I've learned along the way. I initially took this on as a hobby, but also as an experiment because I am a huge advocate for having hobbies and creative outlets that allow you to practice a beginner's mindset and be a witness to your patterns that can often become unconscious in your day to day life activities. Now, for those of you who do not know me, I am a former sprinter, and this was a huge shift for me, not just for my body and like the mechanics of running a 100 or a 200-meter dash versus a 25K trail run, but also mentally. Like, I realized that a lot of the way that I was approaching life was very like pedal to the metal. So when I turned 29, close to the end of 2024, I decided it was going to be a personal best kind of year. And so I signed up for a 25K trail race. And now I am aiming to run my very first marathon ever later this year, hopefully in the city of Marathon. Now, my whole intention for this was to learn to follow a plan and not my mood, because I realized I had gotten into this cycle of when it was close to my period, I would stop and drop all of the movement practices that felt really grounding and nourishing for me in the name of like soft living. Now, I definitely think that it's important for you to give yourself grace as you move through a different phase in your cycle and in your body. However, what rest and grace looks like for me is going to look completely different for you. So it was really a matter of quieting all of the noise and really tuning in and connecting with my body in a way that isn't forcing myself, but still working with my energy instead of constantly overriding it or abandoning my body like I had been used to. And honestly, I didn't expect for it to teach me as much as it has and as much as it continues to, because as you know, when you start something new, or whether you get an inspiration or an idea, you're in this like high, like peak state, you're motivated, and then life happens and you experience feelings and emotions, and then the noise gets loud and it begins to sort of dwindle. And this is when people abandon and begin to question. And this is where the self doubt creeps in. It was never about how fast can I do it. Like, even to this day, I don't have any of the gear that you see a lot of runners have, like the heart rate monitor and the watch and the phone and like all of the things, which, like, to each their own, But for me, really, my intention was to find a way to honor my body and my word, because I knew there were going to be days where I didn't feel like running for whatever reason, whether it was my period or because it was rainy and wet and windy and cold. And I knew that there would be days that I might want to follow the plan so rigidly that I begin to push past what is important and why I set out to do this in the first place. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, I started to realize that neither follow your plan, not your mood, nor follow your joy actually work on their own. Following your mood, if you've noticed, may create habits of inconsistency, but overriding your body can lead to resentment and feeling disconnected. And that's when it actually started to click for me. It was that what most of us are missing is not discipline or intuition, it's self leadership and integrity with our word. Leadership that knows how to stay devoted and when to adjust to how energy moves. And that distinction changed so much for me. I started to see that my mood wasn't a problem, but it also wasn't meant to be in charge. This is also super important and a topic that I can go deep on if you would like me to in another video. But basically, you never want to let your emotions become a mood, because it becomes a state and then it becomes a story. And then it's just like a downhill slope that will take work. And intention to get out of. What I started to do is to see emotions and feelings and moods as information, like weather, like feedback, and joy too. Joy is something that I feel like in today's day and age that so many people are chasing and believe that things should always be joyful when in reality, I think it's a huge disservice because we need to be able to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be alive and to be human and to process things. Joy is something to listen to after you take the action. It shows you what energizes you over time and not just what feels good and is like a quick hit in the moment. The plan, on the other hand, wasn't about forcing myself. It was about self-respect, about deciding who I was committed to being, even when things felt uncomfortable. So instead of deciding whether or not I would show up, I decided that part ahead of time. I got help. My husband helped me create a plan, and then I let my body and my energy and my creativity guide how I show up. So, what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, I needed to run, let's say, 3 days in a week or X amount of miles in a week rather than making it like super rigid of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like that could work. And also life happens. So then if let's say it was like super stormy or it was on my period and I didn't have the energy to, I just knew that I needed to do X amount of miles or 3 running days. So whether they changed between Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I knew what needed to be done. And that is what made this whole endeavor possible. It's super important because it wasn't just on relying on willpower or forcing, because I know if you're here, you are filled with passion, determination, with drive that can make shit happen. And that will only get you so far. It's about having a way to reconnect with yourself before, in the middle, and after of making a decision, a way to check in with your body, to regulate your nervous system, and to come back to what it is that you are devoted to so that you're not acting from a place of pressure or guilt or even avoidance like we've been conditioned to for so many years. And that daily reconnection is what made consistency feel safe again. Eventually, I realized I was working with what I now call a joy informed plan, not a plan that ignores the body and not one that is led by mood, but a way of leading myself with integrity and letting joy inform how life wants to move through me. The way I keep that embodied instead of just something that I talk about or conceptualize is through something called the Reconnection Ritual. It's simple daily practices that help me come back to my body, help me process emotions, and remember what I'm committed to before I create or before I start something and push through. One of the things that surprised me the most was how much this translated beyond running. It translated into my work, into my creativity, into how I relate to my business, to friends, to my offers, into how I stay connected even when things don't go perfectly. This is what allowed me to rebuild a different relationship with structure, that it no longer felt like a threat and joy no longer felt like something that I needed to constantly chase. And there might be some of you on here who are like really into structuring and planning, and then find yourselves having a pendulum swing towards really craving freedom and expansion, and sometimes feeling really unstable in between those. And this does not mean that you are broken. If you've ever found yourself oscillating between pushing and then collapsing or avoiding, or between rigid discipline and total freedom, This is normal. And I hope that this approach that I will share with you helps you create a different relationship with your energy, with your body, with the way that you approach life, and begin to build stronger self leadership and be in integrity with your word and with your desires. So if you ever feel or have felt like choosing between consistency and aliveness, or structure and intuition, or discipline and pressure, you are not alone. This is a really important part that I don't feel like many people are talking about, because you're essentially being invited to create and step into a more mature form of self leadership, one that can hold both devotion and responsiveness at the same time. One of the ways I like to help my clients and students understand and embody this is to think of a river, and the riverbanks represent structure, and the river is your focus and your energy. So without the riverbanks, there probably wouldn't even be a river, or there just would be water flowing in many different directions. And that might be how you feel without structure. And so the key is to finding the things that create that riverbank, that allow you to flow and allow the current of life and your life force energy to flow without force. So, wherever you find yourself on this spectrum, I have created a joy informed framework for you to use as you approach different projects and your life, that can help you reconnect with your body and actually get shit done in a way that feels good, where at the end of the day you are feeling satisfied and proud of yourself. I will link it down below. You'll also find access to the Reconnection Ritual, which is how I live this daily. And if you feel ready for deeper support, there are ways that you can work with me one on one to build this kind of sustainable self leadership in your life, in your relationships, in your business. But for now, before you go, make sure you like and subscribe. And most importantly, know that you do not need to follow your mood, and you do not need to abandon your joy. You get to lead yourself with integrity and let your heart guide how you move. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again soon.